Hi folks, I'm reading just a few lines from the book of Jeremiah chapter 15 and verse 18, where Jeremiah says this: "Why is my pain unending and my wound grievous and incurable? You, God, are to me like a deceptive brook and a spring that fails." Wow, that's some insult to throw at God, isn't it? So these words were spoken by Jeremiah, who was a young prophet of God during the last days of Judah's freedom before they went into captivity in Babylon. Jeremiah obviously loved his country very much, and also its people. He was so sad and disappointed that they had turned away from God, and as a result of this had become altogether corrupt. Does that remind us of a similar situation for us Christians living here in the United Kingdom in these days? Hasn't our nation turned its back on God and as a result has become completely corrupt? Barely a day goes by these days without some more children being abducted or raped or murdered. And don't we become weary of all the bad news in the media these days? We're sickened by it day after day, nothing but bad news. You know, Jeremiah was weary, he was battle weary. He had suffered a lot of abuse and antagonism at the hands of his own people. And for what? He had brought the word of God to them and pleaded with them to return to the right path in following God. And that would have brought them peace and prosperity. So in one of those many moments, he shouted out his frustration to God. And in this case became quite offensive towards God. "You are to me like a deceptive brook, like a spring that fails. I go for a drink and there's nothing there, the brook's dried up. You've let me down." For anyone who may have witnessed this scenario taking place with Jeremiah's words and what he's saying to God, they might have cried out, "Wow, duck everyone, God won't be pleased about this." But instead we read in the next verse, that's verse 19, that God responded to Jeremiah and appealed to him not to lose his heart but to continue his ministry, and that he, God, would protect Jeremiah. You know, folks, there's a lesson that we can all learn from this story. So many Christians that I know that go through difficulties will withdraw from God and sulk. They go missing from church for a while, or permanently perhaps, and they withdraw into themselves. Instead of going towards God and shouting out their frustrations to God like Jeremiah did, they move away from God and throw a pity party. What this proves is that they really don't trust God with their difficulties in the first place. One thing we need to realise is that life is not always a bed of roses, and that sometimes we will encounter hardships and pain. Have you noticed? But if we cry our pain out to God and go through it with Him, we will come out of it victoriously. Those who don't do this simply go round in circles, getting nowhere, just like Israel did in the wilderness. Folks, why don't we trust God in the difficult times? You know, all good relationships have to have trust, or they simply do not work. We are living in days very similar to those of Jeremiah, and it's my opinion that this country is going into captivity anytime soon, just like Judah did, because of its sin. We can see it all around us, can't we? Keep your eyes on the news and see what is happening to our country, and worse is coming. Now isn't the time to lose trust in God. Just listen to the words of Jeremiah in chapter 16 after expressing his frustration at God, and after God reasons with him, Jeremiah said later, afterwards, "Lord, you are my strength and my fortress, my refuge in time of distress." Isn't that wonderful? He learnt his lesson there, didn't he? So instead of keeping our feelings to ourselves and sulking, why don't we cry them out to God like Jeremiah did? And then sometime later, we, like Jeremiah, will walk in the victory. Think about this, folks. Incidentally, I have a sermon on the website about this. It's called Lessons from Jeremiah. Why not try and listen to it, see if it helps you. God bless you all. Have a nice week. Bye for now.